Okay, we are live on YouTube.
Okay, welcome back. House Energy and Digital Infrastructure is here, and today is April 17th. We are going to, first of all, talk about a possible addition to S50. And then if we have time, which I think we should have time, I was hoping, but I didn't really make this explicitly clear, that Rep. Sibilia might help us walk through just a little review of testimony we've taken so far in H11.
Oh, okay.
But if we're not ready to do that, we can reschedule that.
Is Maria coming back?
I thought Maria was going to be here, but that may be a miscommunication on my part. But anyway, let's start with what we know we're doing, which is that just a reminder to bring everybody up to speed. Most of S50 is done. I think we're in agreement on it. We've moved through it. We've talked about it. We've made all of our last changes. And what I wanted to propose to the committee is that we've heard a lot of testimony on the single plant definition. And in asking around informally to folks and kind of talking to people about where they're at, I felt like people were mostly comfortable with asking the PUC to do some work on this over the summer and fall and come back to us in November, with an updated definition. So I just went ahead and drafted this basically from me to all of you to consider. So Ellen, can you walk us through?
Sure. Ellen Tchaikovsky, Appleton Legislative Council. So today posted on your website is draft 4.1 of the single plant definition amendment. And so, yes, based on what you all were talking about yesterday, this is a different formulation of the amendment in that it is a report back, essentially. So on or before this November 1, 2025, and with input from stakeholders, the Public Utility Commission shall submit a proposed amended definition of plant in 30 VSA section 8002-18 to the House Committee on Energy and Digital Infrastructure and the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and Energy. In making its recommendation, the Commission shall consider the land use benefits of co-location of energy generation facilities, the ability to ensure comprehensive review of co-located facilities, and the potential impacts of ratepayers associated with co-located facilities.
Can you shed a little light on what those three considerations mean or put them into context a little bit? Are you able to elaborate?
Well, I do think these are the issues you all were discussing yesterday with Mr. Faber from the PUC. And so I think this was his distillation of what you all were discussing. So you have been talking about broadly in this committee about shared space and so co-location land use benefits. That's the first one. Locating something on the same site as an already existing plant may have benefits because of the co-location. And then the PUC has raised the issue about comprehensive review, splitting, when two plants are located on the same site, there may be cumulative impacts even if you're dividing them. So I think the PUC has raised that concern. And then potential impacts to ratepayers associated with that. I don't know what the potential rate impacts are. But with some of the programs that are at issue on this issue, there is different rates paid depending on what the size of the project qualifies them for. So I was trying to think if you all were discussing any other dimensions of this, but I think this primarily captures the issues that have come up that the committee raised. But if there are other things you want to address, or if you think these need to be tweaked, obviously you have that option.
Okay. Well, we've got two folks in the room who've been, obviously very interested in the outcome of this bill. So, Mr. Faber, I know that I had emailed this. The PUC had suggested some language. I had sent that along to Ellen. And I know that Mr. Sterling, who's been also really involved in taking a look at this bill from the point of view of our solar installers, might have some thoughts as well. So since we have you guys in the room, why don't we get your feedback on this language?
Well, I can go first. Again, Greg Favor for the record, Greg Favor with PUC. Yeah, this language is fine with us. Obviously, it's based on conversations we've had here and the concerns I've heard from the committee, and our aspiration to get a good definition of single plans. We would like to arrive at that goal as well, but we think it'll take a little more time. So I think this will do it from our perspective.
And from your point of view, does this leave anything out?
Not that I know of. I think this pretty much covers it. As Alan said, you want to, one thing I've heard from the committee is you want to increase the ease of locating solar facilities on already occupied land. And I think number one gets at that, the co-location of facilities where there's an existing facility and co-locating another one. One of our concerns is, are we looking at it cumulatively? Are we looking at cumulative impacts? How can we make that easier for the reviewing agencies such as the department, A&R? They need to look at these things too. Are they looking at them holistically? Are they looking at them very singularly? That's something we need to work out. And then the ratepayer impacts, because each program has size limits. So if you're starting to change those size limits, you have to look at the rate impacts of doing so. And I think that pretty much covers it. And obviously, people will have a ratepayer, we'll have a stakeholder process. Folks will be able to send in written comments or make comments at a workshop about other issues that maybe we're not looking at, and we'll consider those as well. But the object is to get a good definition that everyone can get behind.
When you guys do something like this, how do you go about inviting stakeholders, making sure that the folks who want to be in the room are in the room? How do you even do that?
Well, we're very familiar with all the players in this thing. We'll probably do it electronically, send out notice for workshop. Whether we do that virtually, whether we do it in person, we could also do it in written comments. It really depends on what people want to do, but we have the ability to notify all the players in this, all the stakeholders. We do this pretty common. We do a lot of workshops on a lot of different energy subjects, as you can imagine.
Okay, I asked because I've already had one request of somebody who wanted to make sure they were one of the consultant stakeholders, and I was very concerned. I have had a lot of experience with the legislature spending a lot of time fighting over a specific list of who's going to be a stakeholder, who's not going to be a stakeholder.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that folks who want to be in the room and should be in the room are either at the workshop or have a chance to submit written comments.
Yeah, and we'll try to ensure as broad a comment base or stakeholder base as possible. I didn't want to get into the listing either. I mean, we could have done that, but it's
usually
hard. And then you end up leaving somebody out, and you're like, "Why did you specifically leave me out?" It's probably better to do it this way. Again, our intent is to gather as much input as possible, so we can get a definition that everybody can say, "Okay, that works for us," and so we're not going to specifically leave people out.
Okay. Peter, do you have thoughts?
Sure. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Peter Sterling, Renewable Energy. First, really appreciate trying to get us to yes on this. This is, I think it's a solid foundation of an idea to have a process where we can come back next session with consensus language. I think it worked really well with the res bill. I think it worked really well here. Unfortunately, I think this language is unfortunately a little too vague as far as legislative direction goes. It's been my history, my members' history, and my history with the Public Utility Commission that unless there's very clear legislative guidance, things can not come back as you may have intended. And so I think giving more guidance to the PUC in how to manage, in how to run this stakeholder group might be better. I just emailed Jack some language
Can you just walk us through?
Oh,
what
totally. I
it
can
is?
even,
Yeah.
and I can read it. And this is all things that you have been discussing in committee based on what you've read in testimony. So I'll read it slow. The opening paragraph is right. Then the 1, 2, 3, 4 is changed. Facilitate the co-location of renewable projects. So in making this recommendation, the commission shall facilitate the co-location of renewable projects up to 10 megawatt in cumulative capacity or an alternative cumulative capacity that it proposes for balancing the objectives of 1, promoting distributed generation, and 2, promoting the maximum utilization of sites that are well suited for renewable generation. So we're giving the PUC the guidance of what the purpose of changing single plant language is. Next bullet, minimize the requirements for redundant infrastructure, including access roads and line extensions. So again, we're trying to give the PUC greater guidance. The reason to change the language is to minimize the use of redundant infrastructure. And then number 3, provide clear and objective standards that promote predictable results in single plant determination cases. Those are that to me that give the stakeholder clear guidance as to what the amended changes should result in. And I understand that's very different than the guidance the language you have.
So in terms of next steps, whatever the PUC comes back with on November 1 simply becomes the basis for, assuming we take this up next year, or assuming we're interested in taking this up again next year, whatever the PUC proposes, in my mind, simply becomes the starting point for another round of testimony and conversation. So, Mr. Faber, did you have any thoughts on?
Right, I agree with you, Madam Chair. Whatever we come up with, obviously, folks like REV will be able to weigh in on that and say, it doesn't go far enough. Maybe it goes too far. I don't know. But I think the items that Mr. Sterling mentioned are exactly the types of things we're going to discuss in that workshop. So I'd rather leave it broad and come back to you with a basis of a definition that you can your testimony on and consider next session.
Rep. Sibilia?
I have a question. Right now, how are batteries considered when it comes to thinking about?
Battery storage.
Mhm.
Well, they filed applications for CPGs as well, and they're it's all different. There's a different review process for battery storage, given sizes and things like that. But yeah, they're applying for CPG, just like a solar facility would be. Obviously they have a lot less impacts, typically much smaller footprints.
So would we want to would that be considered part of, like if we were to define this?
I haven't thought about that. So you're talking about co-locating storage we do that now. So
I'm thinking about maybe big batteries, bigger batteries.
well,
I don't think they're addressed in this part of the statute
right.
currently, because they are defined in chapter 5, actually, which is the chapter that has 248 in it. So they have their own separate definition, and I don't think they don't fall under the definition of plant currently.
Right.
But
But there is a co-location. Oftentimes battery storage is co-located
Right.
with solar, and we do that now.
And there's no reason it would be
I don't think
precluded
it
right
would.
now.
I don't think it would.
No.
Yeah, I don't think it would impact
Probably
the single
not.
plant definition. No,
Okay.
I can't think. I hadn't thought of that.
Rep. Torrey?
Well, I have a question for you, Greg.
Mhm.
So this report we would get would be a recommendation or multiple recommendations for a definition, and also a report out on your process, who was involved. Is there any data that you might think around CPGs, for example, that we might want included or you may include as part of your process?
Numbers and things like that.
Yeah.
We certainly have all those numbers. We can give those to you if you like. Wouldn't be part of this process. I'm not thinking it would be.
I'm just wondering if like, because we have heard about some trends,
Oh, well, that kind of stuff we have all this.
just
kind
so
of
that we get
statistical.
something kind of complete. Like,
Yeah.
we get a definition,
Sure.
we get some,
Sure. Obviously, you would have us come back, testify in this, and you could say, "Can you please bring us X, Y, and Z information too?" And we'll supply that.
I'm with Rectory and wondering, I'm trying to picture what this is gonna actually
Look like.
be.
yeah.
Is it like one page and here's the new definition, or is it something that we can, read and say, okay, we've got a pretty good understanding of now of where single plant fits in the, fits in the world of renewables. This is, how it, I don't know, how it fits in with the dwindling world of net metering and standard offer. Something a little bit more. I'm a little bit concerned, I'm not quite where Peter is, but I do want to make sure that we get something that is useful to us as still a relatively new committee that's going to allow us to be like, okay, we learned a lot. We didn't find our way through single plant last year, but here's a really useful report that not only includes an updated definition, but tells us why single plant matters from your perspective, where we think we could go. Here's all the stakeholders that come together and provided you with this useful 10-page thing.
Typically,
I just tossed out 10 pages, but I'm just saying if it's a one pager, I'm going to be like, oh man, Peter was right.
typically we would report back on the process, who was involved, here are all the comments from the stakeholders, the written comments. And here's our process. Here's where we landed. Here's the actual recommended statutory language. So you would get all of that.
And a little bit of background and overview.
Well, sure. And then we'll come in and testify on that as well. And then we would describe the process and answer any questions.
Ellen,
So maybe you could consider just inserting just like a couple words to say like, submit a proposed amended definition with an explanation of how they arrived there or something to that.
large.
Yeah.
sure.
Because this is a little bit different than like a research,
It is.
so, but so having some context, I think is what you're looking for instead of just a, 4-sentence definition.
Yeah, that would be a disappointment.
Right.
A little email, a couple of lines, really.
But, some narrative information.
Okay,
Okay, so I can come up with some few words on that.
okay.
Be helpful.
And I'm guessing we probably have some committee members who are going to want to try to follow this, follow along on this process. Log into the virtual workshop if that's possible and follow the written comments and, if not as to stay informed so we're not starting from scratch. Yeah, Rob Putnam.
Do we want to ask for recommendations on how to prevent people from gaming the system? We talked a lot about that and either in the new definition of plan or if we rewrite the bill based on the definition of plan, we are going to want to address that somehow, I think.
Certainly has come up a lot, to which I keep responding. We want to collect, we want to put more solar in these places, so yeah, rep paper.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I mean, that's that is kind of the point, is to have a clear definition that everyone can abide by.
Mhm.
That would reduce gaming. That's the whole thing.
Reduce gaming, but at the same time, make it easier to build where we want it to build.
Right. That's
And
the
at
balance.
same time, make it easier to build and use poles and roads and all that stuff.
Right. That's already existing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Use existing infrastructure and put things where something else is already
Where
located.
we want them.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, is it gaming or is it like the hypothetical fear of gaming? I feel like it's not really happening right now.
Well,
Anyway.
there's lawsuit boy down in the southern part of the state who
Well,
will game any way it can. And, you know, we don't want to write legislation around one person, but
right.
that does provide examples of developers trying to take advantage of programs.
Okay. Sure. Sounds like Ellen, we'd love for you to add just a few words there. Does anybody have any additional thoughts on this language? Is it looking pretty good to folks? Okay. So, Ellen, can you please drop this into S50 and send I guess a draft whatever of S50 that includes all of our changes to date. And then we should maybe do a final. I'm not sure we need another committee discussion or markup. We might just be able to schedule final markup and vote unless folks are feeling that that's not, I feel like we're there. Thank you. Any disagreements with that? Okay, so I had a committee vote scheduled for next Friday, not tomorrow, but next Friday. Just to give it a little bit of time in case we had, you know, any complications or snags, but I don't think we have. But if it's okay with everybody, I'd still like to leave it at next Friday. Because I'm going to be the floor reporter on this one, and I need a weekend to get it ready. That's not Easter weekend. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So we will vote on this next Friday, and then it'll be on the floor the week after. Yeah.
We're going to vote next Friday, and then we're going to gather.
Yeah, we'll vote next Friday, and we'll send, Ellen, when you have the final draft ready, I'll send it to the committee, we'll post it, I'll send it to, Senate so they know it's coming from us. And let them know when we're voting. And so then it would be on the floor on notice to the following Tuesday, on the floor next Wednesday, Thursday, not next. Whew, is that okay with everybody? Okay. Thanks really a lot to Greg and to Peter for being so involved with this. And I feel like we've landed at a good place. And thus concludeth our journey with S50. Thanks, everybody. All right, H11. Should we talk about H11 or Laura, did I spring that on you?
I was not prepared, which actually,
That's
what I've been looking for is my notes, which alarmingly.
That's okay. I mean, we can schedule that for next week.
I'm hoping it's at my desk.
Okay. Is everybody okay if we bail on H11? I had mentioned it a couple times in passing, but I didn't specifically say to Rep. Sibilia.
I mean, I think what we were gonna do is just see
What we've heard so far, what's missing, who we want to hear
which judge
from, but
sent
it's
us,
not,
but I don't.
and I'm not ready to go through it either.
Okay.
So, is everybody okay if we bail?
Here's the chair.
For better or for worse. All right, why don't we, we're adjourned. Let's go off live. Thanks, Jack.
You are welcome.